Welcome back to the Ashton Show, and today joining me I have DJ Rezac, Westside graduate, parent and community member. Thanks for joining me.
You bet.
All right, what is your connection to Westside? More than just obviously graduating and having kids here. What made you come back?
You bet. So my first memory of being at Westside High School is 1976.
Right.
So that's crazy. I was 6 years old. So my dad taught here from 1969 to 1985, and he taught and coached. So as a little boy, I was here all the time.
Do you know what he taught?
He taught marketing.
Oh, marketing?
Yeah, so he was DECA Dick Rezac.
Right.
So he was the second DECA sponsor ever in the history of Westside. And so I think that's the biggest pull. I think as a kid, you want to be like your dad.
Yeah.
Right? And so I watched my dad coach and teach here, and he just helped me recognize that you don't just don't write a check to give back. You actually jump in and you actually be a part of the community. You do something and you be together with the people.
All right. What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 1989, so that's like 30, maybe 30 years ago. Yeah, 31 years ago, probably.
That's a while ago. So
yeah,
yeah. So after that question, I have to ask, what's changed since then?
Well, physically, the place has changed a lot, right? We didn't have the turf fields, we didn't have the turf baseball field, and in fact, where the Super IMCs are, that used to be our cafeteria.
Oh.
The cafeteria where that currently sits used to be the math wing. And my homeroom used to actually sit over there. So physically, it's changed a lot. But I would say probably what's changed the most is, just like with times, we had modular scheduling, but I think kids are so much better today. They just get things faster, right? The amount of stuff like technology that you guys get to use and do is really cool. And I'm always inspired by youth because they always think what's possible. And so I think the stuff like show choir, athletics, academics, I think those have all gotten better. So those have changed. People basically are the same, right? Interactions are always going to determine like how people feel, but the technology and the ability for kids to like excel here, I think that's changed. I think it's always been great. I think it's just getting better.
All right. Now, we know that you do a lot to help sports around Westside. What sports did you play when you came here?
Yeah, so I played all three sports. I played football, basketball, and baseball. And that was back when there was you just didn't do stuff in the off season, right?
Yeah.
I joked the other day that at my sophomore year we got eliminated in the state basketball tournament in the first round, and that's when I started looking for my baseball glove, right? The day after. I mean, now you have training going on a lot, crossover, and it's harder for kids to play all sports. But those were the three that I played.
All right, and with those sports, what were your favorite memories that go along with being here at Westside?
I think the people, I think it's always relationships that you remember the most. I don't recall so many games and special things. I remember the people that I went through with, my teammates, my coaches. Both my football coaches have passed away in the last 2 years, and so I was fortunate enough to speak at both of their funerals. And so I remember the relationships and the people and the laughing. My wife is a graduate of here, so we grew up together, right? And so a lot of our fondest times were in high school when we were just learning how to be adults. And so I think it's always the people.
All right. So what came after Westside?
So I went to Indiana and I played football. I walked on at Indiana and I played football. And so I played my freshman year and then I quit. And then I ended up staying at Indiana for my sophomore year. I didn't play sports my sophomore year. And then after my sophomore year, I transferred back to Lincoln and graduated from Lincoln, and I opened Lazzari's Pizza. So I was 1993, I opened Lazzari's Pizza, and then I ended up opening up some bars and restaurants. And then around 2000 or so, I came back and I bought KB Building Services. And that's the company I own right now.
And how did these experiences help shape you into the person you are today?
I think the best lesson I've ever learned is I was going to fail. I was going to fail a lot. And I had lots of moments where things weren't going great for me, but I didn't quit, right? And I think I learned that after I quit football at Indiana, right? My freshman year, I went out there. It didn't work out really well for me, so I quit. And so what I learned from those experiences, I think, was not to quit. And so when I work with sports teams here, or I work with any other teachers or organizations on building their culture, it's a reminder that you're going to have adversity, but don't quit.
All right. And then how did you said that after you did pizza in Lincoln that you came back and did KB. So how did you get involved?
So my mom and my aunt started the company in like 1984. I was in like junior high. So I helped work. I was part of the forced labor crew when I was growing up. So I had to vacuum buildings and do that stuff. When I sold my bars and restaurants in Lincoln, my mom and my aunt were looking for somebody to buy their business. And so it ended up being a good fit, and I bought it. And then, so now I've owned that for probably 18 years.
So how have you changed / grown it since then?
Oh, well, you know what we did? We grew when I stopped, or I would say this. We grew when I started listening to my employees. I started giving them a voice on how we did things, and the overall feeling was all of us is smarter than the one of us. And so when I used to think it was just going to be my way as the entrepreneur, we didn't have as much success, but I let people in and I listened. And then we got really good at implementing some of the ideas that the best people in our company had.
All right. So explain to me how KB started getting more involved with Westside, because we know that you guys do a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
So sponsoring the Westside baseball team was probably our first foray into like actively sponsoring a team. I had always done stuff for Westside DECA, and because my dad had been a teacher. But it kind of clicked one time. We were at a state baseball tournament in Lincoln, and we had invited everyone down to Lazzari's Pizza afterwards. And my wife, Lisa, looked at me and said, "Look at this, right? Look at all the people that this affects, right? There was 150 students and parents and coaches and teammates in our restaurant celebrating a state championship." And we realized that we had the opportunity to make an impact on young people's lives by giving back. And so I think it started there in like 2009, and just more and more opportunities have kind of presented themselves. And what we teach people is excellence is hard to keep quiet, right? Yeah. Just be excellent right where you are. And so I think we kept serving teams and tried to strive for excellence, and more people took notice and said, "Hey, we would love for you to help us too." And so we've kind of taken that role as to help serve the community.
Now, was there really any buddy, as far as when you were at Westside, like a thing like KB, like a business that really remember giving back?
I think Pace Setters organization. I think Harley Schrager was really instrumental in helping. I think there were always great community members. I think it was less visible, if that makes sense. We had people who sponsored our baseball team, but there was less maybe opportunities for companies to actually partner with schools. And so I think that's maybe changed. There's been more opportunity to kind of be involved, but there's always been great community supporters at Westside since I mean, back in the 70s when my dad started teaching here. It maybe just a little bit less visible, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, would you say they inspired you to get more involved with helping around the community and at the school?
Well, I think the leadership here, Dr. Tangdahl, Ken Bird, these are superintendents that my dad worked with. And I think, yeah, they really embraced the part of this is a Westside Community Schools. And when you're part of a community, like I said, when I was a little boy, I watched my dad and he gave back. And I watched my mom grow her company and she helped give back. And so I think I was inspired by all the people that came before us, right? Dr. Finley was my principal, and he's still active today in the Retired Teachers Association. And just great leaders, great people that didn't care who got the credit, if that makes sense. They just wanted Westside to win. And so I think I was inspired by that. And then I love to compete, right? Whether it's in sports or whether it's in show choir or whether I love to compete. And it doesn't mean we always have to win, but I think we want to strive to win.
All right. Now, can you tell me about Dare to Dad?
Oh, yeah. So, well, actually, we folded Dare to Dad up into our time. I have a Time for Two coaching business. And so I help coach sports teams and businesses and families. And so Dare to Dad's one of the programs that we use with our families. It's about just intentional leadership, how to be intentional about what you want, how to get clarity, and then how to connect. And with connection, it's with sports teams, it's businesses, it's with your family. And the Time for Two stands for, I would run into people, Ashton, all the time that would say, I'm really good at work, but I'm not very good at home. Or I'm really good at home, but my work life isn't very good. And it seemed like everyone always made an excuse for why one was good and the other one wasn't. And I always thought, if you are intentional about your time, you actually have time for two. You can have time for both. You can be really great in business, but you can also be really great in your family too. So that's the program. It's really powerful. But that's the coaching business that I use to help build culture in all the different programs here at Westside.
Now, you said that you have people come up and talk to you about how they struggle with making time for stuff and helping get better at it. Do you struggle with anything as far as obviously you do a lot, so
Yeah.
with your involvement with your business and then your family and then obviously giving back to the community, how do you help yourself manage that?
Yeah, well, so I struggle all the time, right? Because I say this, I'm a great dad, except for when I'm not. I'm a great business leader, except for when I'm not, right? And the duality of that sentence is so true because nobody's perfect, right? I'm going to make mistakes, you're going to make mistakes, but what we want to try and strive for is to create a sense of love and belonging where we don't have to be perfect. You don't have to please or perform or perfect for me. You just have to be you, right? And so when we accept ourselves for who we are, then I think that allows us to then pursue excellence. So I struggle with time management. I struggle with, sometimes I'm not sometimes I say yes too much. Sometimes I say no too much. It's a really tough act to be perfect, right? And so I think what I've learned as a young adult is failure's okay, right? It's never final, right? It's seldom fatal, right? It doesn't kill me. I just have to learn and grow from it. And so I struggle all the time, I mean, my kids will tell you that I'm not really a great dad at certain times, and they'd be right, you know what I mean? But the acceptance of that fact, I think, allows us to be human, right? And that's connection. As human beings, we just want to connect with each other.
All right, and how has starting Dare to Dad helped you with what you do?
So it reminds me that I'm in charge of my response every time, right? So I get to decide how I show up, and I have to own it, right? Because I think knowing So I had 4 kids under the age of 2, right? Dominic and Carly were 2, and Anthony and Teddy were born. And my business was struggling, and my home life was struggling. I mean, it was crazy. And so what I think starting Dare to Dad did for me was it reminded me that I couldn't blame and complain and deflect my own behavior. And we talk about that all the time, BCD. It never works. It'll never improve a relationship or solve a problem. And I used to do a lot of it, right? Because it was my default. And it wasn't that I wasn't right. I mean, I had every right to complain and blame and deflect my own behavior. It just wasn't going to help me. And so I think starting Dare to Dad reminded me that there's no free moves. Every response I have as a leader in my family is an event for my kids. And so I took that very seriously because they didn't ask to be here, right? I decided to bring kids into this world. And so I'm always in charge of my own response, 100% of the time, even when I don't want to be, right? And that means I screw up sometimes. So what do I have to do? Own it. I have to own that and repair any damage that I make if I mess up.
Now, expanding on that, do you wish that when you were younger that you had anything like this in your life? Dare to Dad?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think being the change that you want to see is really important, right? So I think if you wished you would get more, time to study, then do that. Be the change you want to see. So yes, I think the intentional leadership, I think I always yearned for something like this, right? I wanted to learn more. I mean, I think happiness comes from thirst for learning, serving others, and building relationships, right? And when I was a young professional, I chased after money, image, and status. And none of that brought me more happiness, but thirst for learning did. And so, yes, I think, and I think I got this in certain ways, right? It maybe wasn't as formal as this, but I do know once I started being more intentional about what I wanted, the world kind of started showing up in the way that I wanted it to show up for me.
All right. So what is some advice that you would like to give to high schoolers in today's world?
My thing is, if you knew how powerful your mind was, you would never feed it another negative thought, right? And I think that's the get your mind right piece of all the stuff that we talk, right? That inner voice inside your head talks to yourself all day long, right? And mine's no different, right? I wake up and I think, oh, I didn't get enough sleep, and oh, I have so much to do, right? And I think if I would tell a high school kid, it would be like, make sure that inner voice, it can either help you or hurt you. And so many people rely on just get better, right? You just get better. And you got to get better. And instead of getting better, I think what I would tell high school kids is accept yourself. Accept yourself and then get better. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think being okay with who you are, right? And you're not going to, I've changed so many times since I graduated from here at 18 years old. I mean, I learn every single day. And I think that's the part that I still struggle with as an adult is accepting myself and my shortcomings. But once I do accept myself and my shortcomings, then I can choose to either change it, work on it, or sometimes that's just, I'm not going to be perfect.
And do you think that social media has had a positive or negative effect on accepting yourself?
Oh, I think both. I mean, I think it's very powerful. Yeah, no, I don't know. Usually my phone's ringer's off. So I think social media does both. And I think it's a powerful tool, right? It's an unbelievably, it's more powerful than I think we even give it credit for. I think it's your lens that you see through, right? It's either adore me, right? I scored all these points, or I made these touchdowns, or I won this grand championship at show choir. Let's see how many likes I can get. and it's the reverse. Oh my God, look at him, look at him, look at her. I wish I had more of the attention. I wish I had more of the attention. So I think it's whatever lens you look through. But I think what social media does is the danger is you're validating yourself through someone else's eyes. And I think that's the get your mind right. You can validate yourself. You don't need anyone else to tell you you're okay. You can tell yourself you're okay, right? And if we rely on that too much, we're taking it out of our control, right? Our control of our own response. And so it's scary. I think social media is good. I also think it's very dangerous, and it can be very bad. So it's hard. It's hard to navigate because, if I was a 16-year-old boy and, I got attention from colleges and scholarship offers, it would be hard to not let that maybe define me.
Yeah.
Right? And really, I own Time for Two, but that's not, that's what I do for a living. That's not me, right? I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm not my job. And so it can be scary sometimes.
Now, would you say that, I know you mentioned kids getting scholarship offers and it affecting who they are. Would you say that with the way recruiting affects social media, that people are often becoming that based off their athletic success?
Well, yeah. I think that's the danger, right? So when I was 16, 17, 18, I was going through all these different things emotionally and physically, like trying to mature, right? And trying to figure out, was I going to be a tough guy, or was I going to be a smart guy, or was I going to be the funny guy, or was I going to am I going to use drugs and alcohol because I need to fit in with that group? There's all those different things that are thrown at our youth today, and I think it's scary because without a safe place to land and work through that, it's a really dangerous road for kids because they can just be like, well, look, all these people adore me because of this. That's who I am. I'm a tough guy. So I got to be a tough guy. So when we're at the party, what do tough guys act like? Or no, I'm a smart person, right? I can't go to that party because I've been associated with this group or whatever. I think it does factor into kids, which is why they need to have this common language that they have a safe place to land, right? Because they can be really vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, you want to have someone there who can help guide you.
All right. So speaking of finding out who you're going to be and being vulnerable, what advice would you give seniors going to college and also people who are in college currently?
Yeah. So I think don't be afraid to fail. You're going to, I failed a lot. And every single time I failed, I've learned from it. And so my biggest advice is try things. Dream big. So we always talk in our sports teams, start with the biggest dream that you think is possible. Because nothing ever happens without a dream, right? Because we want to inspire hope. Then when it comes back down, though, you got to have faith, right? What's the faith? So we have hope, faith. And faith means, what are you going to do? Do you have a system? Do you have a plan? Do you have things to do? And then adversity is going to come, right? You're going to get obstacles, but now you got to work through them. And so we say hope, faith, and then the final piece is love, right? If you have hope, faith, and love, you could try anything and fail, right? Because if you knew that you couldn't fail, that no matter what, you'd be loved, you'd go and try everything. Right? But even me as an adult, that's the hard part. When someone said, oh, start Time for Two or start Dare to Dad, I'm like, who am I to tell anybody else how to be a dad? Sometimes I'm a horrible dad. And it's like, what? But you have to have a dream. And you have to say, it's okay if I'm not perfect. And I'm going to fail. And even if I fail, oh, well, I'll pick myself up. And that's how you accomplish things in life. So I would say to college kids, pay attention, but I don't think fail miserably is what you're going after, but don't be afraid to try things. And when you fail, pay attention, because what happens when we fail, we like to blame others, complain, and deflect. But if we're super honest with ourselves, we can accept ourselves and then learn and grow, which is the beautiful part about being a young kid. I would trade with you in a heartbeat. I'm like 49. I would love to be an 18-year-old kid again.
Yeah. I don't have much more for you, but do you have any thing else you'd like to add to this?
Nothing. I just love what you guys are doing. I love that you take the ownership of it and run with it. I think it's so cool. I think Westside's one of the coolest places, that I've ever been around. And to have so many great teachers, educators, administrators, and superintendent, staff that care about the direction of our community and our youth it's inspiring to be a part of. And so I'm just so lucky. I'm totally blessed. Thanks for inviting me in.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for coming. You were a great guest. Thank you.
Love it.
All right.
Good.